Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the other side of the news. Today, July 14th, 2020. Today, we're going to look at the Wall Street Journal opinion page. Today, there are a few things I want to talk about. Now, these are from the opinion page. Yesterday, I quoted some articles, but now these are pretty good opinions. They're well written and they're more articulate than I can be, so let's get to it. First, I want to look at the case for reopening schools. Up first, the case for reopening schools. The harm from lost instruction outweighs the COVID-19 risks, by the editorial board. Everything else about the coronavirus has become politicized in America, so why not a return to school as well? That's the depressing state of play as President Trump pushes schools to reopen while Democrats heed teachers' unions that demand more federal money and even then may not return. The losers, as ever, would be the children. The evidence, scientific, health, and economic, argues overwhelmingly for schools to open in the fall. Start with the relative immunity of young children to the disease, which should reassure parents. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, 30 children under age 15 have died from COVID-19. In a typical year, 190 children die of the flu, 436 die from suicide, 625 die from homicide, and more than 4,000 from unintentional deaths such as drowning. Only 2 children under age 18 have died in Chicago, fewer than were killed in shootings in a recent weekend. In New York City, 0.03% of children under age 18 have been hospitalized for COVID, and 7.5 in 1 million have died. The death rate for those over 75 is more than 2,200 times higher than those under 18. Children so far have been shielded from the virus compared to working adults, but even pediatric cancer patients at New York Memorial's Sloan Kettering were about a third less likely to test positive than their adult daycare givers. And only 1 of the 20 who tested positive required non-critical hospital care. In Sweden, which kept schools open, only 20 children under age 19, 0.6% of confirmed cases, have been admitted to the ICU and only 1 has died. Parents and teachers understandably worry that children might spread the virus. But a recent retrospective study of schools in northern France from February before lockdowns found that, quote, despite 3 introductions of the virus into 3 primary schools, there appears to have been no further transmission of the virus to other pupils or teaching and non-teaching staff of the schools, unquote. Teens appear to be more infectious, yet schools that have reopened in most countries, including Germany, Singapore, Norway, Denmark, and Finland, haven't experienced outbreaks. Some schools in Israel had outbreaks last month after class sizes were increased, but most infections in both teachers and students were mild. In any case, the risks can be managed as the Trump administration has suggested in its guidance to schools. Space desks 6 further apart, stagger class periods, make kids wear face coverings when possible, keep them in the same cohort, and have them eat, play, and learn outdoors as much as possible. Teachers can also wear face shields, and schools can use plastic barriers in higher grade level classrooms to separate them from kids. That's a stupid idea. Teachers who are older or have underlying health problems deserve special accommodations, but employers and employees in most industries are making adjustments to manage through the pandemic, and there's no reason schools and teachers can't. States so far have received $150 billion in pandemic relief from Congress, much of which can go to education, and schools have received $13.2 billion on top of that. Unions are demanding more, but Education Secretary Betsy DeVos says schools have used a mere $195 million. Republicans in Congress should condition additional funding in a 5th virus aid package on schools physically reopening 5 days a week. If some public schools or districts refuse to open, make the money available to charter or private schools that are open. Keeping schools closed while awaiting a vaccine isn't an acceptable alternative. You need a degree in child psychology to know that kids have struggled with virtual education. A Reuters analysis last month found that fewer than half of 57 public school districts were taking attendance. About a third weren't providing required services to special needs students. Teachers' unions have fought to reduce accountability. United Teachers Los Angeles Pandemic Collective Bargaining Agreement prohibited schools from requiring face-to-face online instruction, such as Zoom or Skype. Teachers also don't have to work more than 4 hours per day. Philadelphia Superintendent William Haidt warned that kids were falling through the cracks which could portend an increase in youth delinquency and crime. Research outfit NWEA has projected that students are likely to return in fall 2020 with approximately 63 to 68% of the learning gains in reading relative to a typical school year, and with 37 to 50% of the learning gains in math. Another half year or year of lost instruction will be impossible to make up. Achievement gaps will surely increase. Affluent families may supplement and monitor their children's virtual instruction while working from home. But how can a first grader, whose parents don't have that luxury, be expected to learn virtually on his own? Missing school can have serious consequences for children's health and well-being, particularly for students with disabilities and with special health care needs, American Academy of Pediatrics President Sally Goza said recently. Students physically in school, she added, learn social and emotional skills, get healthy meals and exercise, and mental health support. Schools help identify and address learning deficits, physical abuse, substance abuse, depression, and suicide ideation. These are all critical reasons to get children back to school. The AAP last weekend endorsed union financial demands on reopening, but the child health point holds. Millions of parents can't return to work if the children can't attend school. Opening the schools is essential to the well-being of students, and teachers and administrators have a duty to make it happen. Well, that was extremely well said. I really can't say anything better, other than the fact that time children aren't in school is lost time, and children cannot make it up. As was mentioned, who does this affect the most? Affluent, meaning rich families, they'll find tutors, they'll find ways to make up for it. Poor families don't have those opportunities. Schools need to be open, and they need to be open in September on time. Let's look at this now. The rule of law in the South China Sea. The State Department finally declares Beijing's claims unlawful by the editorial board. That's the U.S. Navy flagship America class amphibious assault ship USS America during routine patrol in the South China Sea April 20th. In the last decade, China has intensified its efforts to exert military control over the South China Sea, the vital waterway also claimed in part by Vietnam, the Philippines, Malaysia, and others. While the U.S. has sent warships on freedom of navigation exercises, it has remained formally neutral on these maritime disputes. No longer. In a statement released Monday, the State Department declared that Beijing's claims to offshore resources across most of the South China Sea are completely unlawful. In 2016, the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague said as much, but China ignored it and accelerated its militarization. The State Department document for the first time embraces that ruling, says, quote, the world will not allow Beijing to treat the South China Sea as its maritime empire. During the pandemic, Chinese vessels have tailed Malaysian oil exploration boats and rammed the Vietnamese fishing boat, sinking it, by the way. Beijing wants to repudiate international norms and control commercial activity in the region. This month, the U.S. sent 2 aircraft carriers to the South China Sea, prompting a state media outlet to tweet that, quote, China has a wide selection of anti-aircraft carrier weapons, and any U.S. aircraft carrier moving in the region is at the pleasure of the Chinese military. Beijing has probably concluded that it can gradually tighten its grip on the South China Sea, and while the U.S. might complain and occasionally send naval assets passing through, its hegemony won't be challenged. Monday's State Department decision, along with shows of military force, signals that the U.S. may be toughening its military strategy against Chinese regional bullying. This is one of those Trump-era diplomatic moves, like moving the Israeli embassy to Jerusalem or pulling out of failing arms accords that our more risk-averse administration would not have tried. China won't be happy, yet the decision brings official U.S. policy in line with international law and geopolitical facts. No matter who wins the White House this year, a key priority of U.S. foreign policy in 2021 will be deterring Chinese lawlessness and expansion. This is a necessary first step. Very well said. It's about time we've stepped up to the Chinese. Okay, well, let's do one more piece. AOC's Hill of Beans. The boycott Goya radicals lack even the good sense to follow Saul Alinsky's advice, by William McGurn on the opinion page. It's come to this. They want to cancel black beans. The target is Goya Foods, America's largest Hispanic-owned food company. Within hours after its CEO, Bob Unanue, said at a Rose Garden event that America was blessed to have a leader like President Trump who was a builder, boycott Goya started trending on Twitter. Naturally, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Democrat from New York, jumped out in front. Oh, look, it's the sound of me Googling how to make my own adobo, the Queen's Congresswoman tweeted. That's a popular Goya seasoning she wants people to go without. But Goya's CEO isn't backing down. When asked the next day on Fox News if he apologized, Mr. Aounu was succinct. Hell no. It's easy to point out how senseless and counterproductive this boycott is. Founded in 1936 by Mr. Aounou's Spanish immigrant grandparents, the company is a living example of the American dream. Mr. Aounounou was at the Trump White House in the hope his company's story will inspire other Latino entrepreneurs. He points out that he visited the White House for a similar celebration in 2011 when Barack Obama saluted him. He was also praised by Michelle Obama for Goya's big role in her healthy food initiative. None of it matters to AOC and her comrades. In the same way, it's futile to try to persuade mobs tearing down statues to distinguish between Robert E. Lee and Ulysses S. Grant. The progressives targeting Goya aren't interested in facts or debate. They aren't interested because they don't build. They only tear down. Goya now has their attention not because a boycott will improve life for anyone, but because it feeds their celebrity and self-righteousness. Oh my God, that's well said. Consider Ms. Ocasio-Cortez. Her defeat in 2018 of the longtime Democrat Representative Joseph Crowley was a political upset, but her chief contribution to her constituents since then is that she was instrumental in killing a deal in which Amazon would have opened a second headquarters in her district, which is in Queens, New York. Her efforts cost her constituents 25,000 jobs. And these were a lot of poor people, folks, let me tell you. Billions in lost tax revenue and the knock-on effects to the rest of the local economy. A successful Goya boycott would have similar destructive consequences. Ms. Ocasio-Cortez's example speaks to the priorities of the modern progressive. She has 7.6 million followers on Twitter, has an aspired and action figure, a comic book analogy. Yeah, I can't read this crap. Okay, well, I'll go to the end here. Never mind keeping citizens safe. Ensuring the public schools provide a good education, making your city more attractive for jobs and investment, these kind of concrete concerns are deemed too pedestrian or perhaps too hard by today's progressives. They're not even that good at radicalism. Remember the subtitle for Sal Solinsky's Rules for Radicals was a practical primer for realistic radicals. He warned about overreaching, noting that unless targets are narrowly selected, boycotts will probably fail as people tire of them and then drift back to their own ways of shopping. In particular, he warned boycott organizers to carefully avoid essentials such as meat, milk, bread, and basic vegetables, since even selective buying weakens after a period of time as the opponent cuts his prices below his competitors. So what do AOC and her fellow progressives choose? To boycott all 2,500 products of a beloved food brand that reminds people of their grandmother's kitchens. As a result, for every go away or boycott Goya tweet, there now appears to be a rival buy Goya tweet from those purchasing more Goya products. Goya is lucky that it has a CEO who understands what a paper tiger that cancel culture really is when leaders stand up to it. And lucky, too, that the woke politicians pushing this boycott are more obsessed with theater than a practical progressive agenda that might leave something good behind. Folks, boy, that's extremely well said. I couldn't say it better. And you go back to AOC and her getting rid of Amazon, that was a tragedy for the poor people in New York and particularly in Queens. It's just unbelievable. But anyway, that's what these progressives are, unbelievable. They don't care about poor people, folks. They don't care about poor people at all. They have a mission. And if they have to sacrifice poor people to make their point, they're willing to do that. Keep that in mind. Okay, listen, thanks so much for watching The Other Side of the News. Please remember to subscribe, to like, leave a comment. Until tomorrow, bye-bye.